by Lion and Mack and Peterbilt. And then those are the OEMs that will be presenting, and then Cleantech, who will be presenting EVSE and charge management, and the Air District presenting incentives and regulations.
So we want you all to be engaged. And so our first polling question, when do you anticipate? So what I want to do is give you all a few minutes to respond to that very first polling question. When do you anticipate introducing your first heavy-duty zero-emission refuse trucks to your fleet?
And I know you said a couple minutes, Jennifer, but I think
seconds. I'm sorry. Yeah, like we have like maybe
just gonna
30 more seconds.
I don't want to get to the end and have Christian have no time to do his presentation.
I know, right? I know. I apologize. Like 30 more seconds.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay. So I am going to close the poll and share the results here.
That's fascinating to see that we're beginning to see some folks who are really getting into. I mean, we have nearly 20% of the folks responding that they intend to get something in 2021, which should be very encouraging to our 3 OEM presenters, which then leads me to say that we're going to kick it right off. Our first presenter is Charles Williams with Lion Electric. He is the regional sales manager for truck sales. And so if we're ready, Jennifer and Charles, let's get started with that presentation.
This is Charles Williams, sales manager with Lion Electric. Happy New Year. I hope all of you guys are safe from the pandemic. And I'd like to start with an introduction to Lion Electric's Refuge truck. It's a video that shows our truck in operation. I'm very excited about this, and I'm happy to share it with you. So Jennifer, could you move to slide 2 and activate the video?
Absolutely.
Next slide, please. We currently have 325 trucks in operation today and over 6 million miles on the road. Our manufacturing capacity of our Lion 6 and Lion 8 trucks is about 2,500 trucks a year. We have an R&D facility in Montreal, Canada, and we'll be opening up 4 more facilities in 2022. Also, we're purpose-built. We currently have 450 employees. By the end of the year, we should reach 500 employees. Next slide, please. This is a lineup of our trucks. We're very proud of our electric trucks and buses. As you can see, from Lion 6 to the Lion D bus. This is a compilation of all of the relationships that we currently have in the United States and Canada, and this group of customers actually represents 2,600 commitments for new purchases of our vehicles. Next slide. Like I mentioned earlier, our trucks are purpose-built. We build our own cabs, our own chassis, a battery management system, so there's no hydraulics. It's fully 100% electric. Our composite, in terms of the cab, there's no rust, there's no corrosion, no downtime, and our trucks and buses have V2G capabilities. Next slide. We're continually growing. We currently have 8 experience centers located in the United States. In California, we have one in Sacramento as well as one in Los Angeles, and we're planning to open up another 6 this year as well. So we're growing and very excited to service our clients. Next slide, please. Going electric, obviously, there's a huge advantage in terms of savings. When it comes to energy costs, is 80% reduction going electric and 60% reduction for maintenance costs. Next slide, please. And of course, the standout is affordability and sustainability. And when you run the numbers, when we do a total cost of ownership, it will be very indicative that we are saving you money. And the real advantage here is you're helping reduce greenhouse gas reduction or emissions into the air. This is a look at our Line 8 Refuge truck. The maximum power is 350 kilowatts as well as 470 horsepower. Battery capacity is up to 362 kilowatt hours. The Lion truck, if you purchase one, you'll be helping the climate because it reduces 100 tons of greenhouse gas in the air as well. And we got this measurement from the EPA calculator. And you have the option to have level 3 charging, the combo pack, as well as the J1772 level 2 charging. Next slide, please. We have the option in terms of our automated side loader. As far as the wheelbase is concerned, 2-axle, 220 wheelbase, and 3-axle with a 244 wheelbase. The maximum payload for the 2-axle is 12 tons. For the 3-axle is 11 tons. And we will introduce the final specs for our rear loader in the 3rd quarter of this year. Next slide, please. The roll-off will come as well in the 3rd quarter of this year, and the front-end loader will be released in 2022. Next slide. The stated range for these for this Refuge truck is 130 miles with the 252 kilowatt battery pack, and with the 333 kilowatt battery pack, it's 170 miles. If you are running the AC, of course, you're going to tax the battery, so the mileage would be 85 miles on the smaller battery pack, and for the 336 battery pack, you would reach 130 miles. If you use the heater, you could, for the 252 kilowatt hour pack, the range would be between 75 miles to 95 miles. For the 336 kilowatt hour battery pack, it would be 115 miles to 135 miles. And we're proud to say that our Refuge truck can collect up to 1,200 bins going into a residential community. Next slide, please. The same chassis will serve a platform to accommodate different applications for public and private fleets. So our chassis is well versed and integrated to perfectly assist those fleets that have different operations in terms of what type of bodies they would need to be efficient. Next slide, please. We're proud, since 2016, we've been doing this for quite some time, and our buses, our electric buses, as well as our trucks, have been tested throughout the United States in warm and cold weather conditions, and they have been operating efficiently. So our track record is fine. Next slide. And we take an all-encompassing approach. We like to make sure that we understand the customer's needs, and we start by listening and understanding what they would like to accomplish. So we have 6 different divisions that we have developed to focus on helping the customers. We have a line grant team that specializes in writing grants and filling out applications and submitting them to the various agencies. We have a line energy department that works with fleet managers to ensure that we understand the infrastructure and the charging type of charging systems that they need in place to be more productive and efficient. We also have a line academy where we have a team of professionals that are available to train and educate your fleet and your staff on the technologies and how to maintain the truck. Also, we have alliance assistants, and they're on call to understand and respond to your questions or when you inquire about the truck or any information that you need. Also, we have a Bright Squad team that works with your operations and understands how to provide the information that you need and look for information from you to feedback to our manufacturing facility to ensure that we report ideas and recommendations to enhance our innovation. And the Line Beat team is a team that helps you with measuring the performance of your trucks and the performance of your drivers with the telematics package. And I appreciate your time this morning to present an overview of Lion Electric and the Refuge truck. This is my contact information. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. Thank you, and I will pass this on to the next presenter.
Before we go to the next presenter, Charles, I'd like to ask a question, if I may. Do you have any of the truck demos running right? This is the Refuge truck demos running anywhere right now?
Well, we have certainly have orders that have been taken in place for Waste Connection and EcoMain. We will have a truck that comes to the California market sometime this year, third quarter on. But right now, we do not have a truck in the market, but it's forthcoming.
And you mentioned V2G, which would be being able to access the power that's in the truck to put back into a building or into some other use. Is that going to be a standard feature of the truck, or is that a specialty order?
Well, that will be a standard feature for the truck, for our bus and our trucks. And by the way, I wanted to add, Tim, that we are on the state contract, so there's an option to purchase on the state contract, and we also have a relationship with Sourcewell.
Excellent, excellent. Well, if any other questions come in while we're going through the rest of it, we'll get to yours at the end. And I guess at this point then, Jennifer, we would then introduce Scott Barraclaw with Mac, who's the Refuge sales manager for Mac. And Scott, if you're ready, and Jennifer, just get his screen set up and we're ready to go with Mac.
My name is Scott Barraclaw. I'm the technology product manager for Mack Trucks, and I appreciate you inviting me back to do this. I was here last year. If you attended, we had a similar seminar about this time last year. It's actually the last time I had to travel for work. It's kind of interesting in these strange times in which we live. Okay, talk a little about Mack Trucks. We've been in this business for a long time. We are a leader in the refuse segment with a truck to meet virtually all refuse applications, whether it's front loader, side loader, automated, whatever. We have a truck for you. We have the Granite model for roll-offs. Of course, we have 2 dedicated platforms for the low cab over, depending on the needs. Serving our customers is something we've been doing for over a century. We're 121 years old this year, and we're proud to highlight our expertise and leadership in the refuse segment. If you look at some of these trucks here, we've got our 1908 Mack Manhattan, a Mack Senior, the Beneath that, from 1915, a 1963 Mack MB, and of course that brings us to today where we have our Mack LR. We've been in the refuse market for a long time, and using driver inputs, we have a class-leading product in the refuse application. Okay. There we go. Powertrain innovation is another area where we've been working for quite a while. If you go back into the mid-1990s, we had the first compressed natural gas motor on the market with our E7G. Those of you may have seen some of those back in the day. We also worked with the City of New York and a few other customers on a hybrid project. Never made it to commercialization, but it actually worked very well, sort of a predecessor to our electric endeavor. Prove that there is opportunity in refuse for applications like this. Which brings us to the LR Electric. It's the latest example of our leadership in the refuse and recycling industry. It's built on our decades of experience in powertrain innovation. Its quiet, zero-emission operation is a tremendous fit for many refuse applications. Okay. Mack LR Electric, it's an electric truck first and foremost, which brings with it all of the class-leading features that the LR diesel truck possesses. You have your large glass area for excellent visibility, a driver-designed ergonomic cab, excellent mirrors for safe operation. But why refuse? You know, you look at a lot of other folks out there that are going into regional haul delivery. Why refuse? Well, we are a leader in the refuse market, as well as refuse. Application really works well. It's a closed loop operation with the trucks operating on a predetermined route, so it's predictable. We know where the trucks are going to be week in and week out, and they're home every night to the same place. So it makes a good place to install your infrastructure for charging. And the start and stop nature of refuse trucks allows plenty of opportunity for regenerative braking to recapture energy, put it back into the vehicle. And of course, it goes without saying the zero emissions, which is where a lot of the interest in California and some other areas is really the big motivator there. Another one is reduced noise. And I don't think that really gets enough discussion when operating these vehicles. You know, if you've been to a demonstration where they have a diesel truck and an electric truck next to each other, I think a lot of us have driven the diesel trucks and you're sitting in the cab and, you know, there is noise there. You're sitting close to a diesel engine. Never really thought too much of it because that's just kind of how it was. But if you drive a diesel truck and then you hop into the electric truck, it's eerie how quiet it is inside. And I believe your operators are really going to like that. You know, as Rocky DeRico, the Deputy Commissioner in the City of New York has said, you know, drives like a big golf cart, and you know, in a certain way, it is kind of like that. Very quiet. Your operators are really going to like that. And as some of those mentioned, there's sustainability benefits as well with reduced maintenance. You don't have a lot of consumables that you do on a diesel truck, like oil changes, filters, brakes. We expect to see significantly improved brake wear with the advent of regenerative braking. That will take over a lot of the braking duty. So hopefully the service brake components will last a whole lot longer. Okay, Jennifer, if you want to start the video.
Scott, while we're waiting for that to get back to you, one of the questions that came in was whether or not, let's see, what was it here? What some of the recurring problems might be? Oh no, for Mack relative to this truck. What are some of the recurring problems you might have been having?
Some of the recurring problems?
Recurring problem.
Recurring problems. Well, again, you know, with a new product, sure, there'll be something that comes up, but right now we've not seen anything that's, I would call, endemic that we would expect to see repeated problems with at this point. You know, we've got trucks out there testing, we'll talk about in just a minute here. Let's see. It looks like you see my screen again, so let's go to the next slide here. We'll talk about that in just a minute. We'll talk about the test program in just a minute, and I can get into a little bit more of that.
And you've got about 5 to 7 more minutes.
Okay, no, that's just fine. Talk a little bit about the specs. You heard some of that in the video, just to have this in writing here. So when you come, if you want to come back and review it, we do have 2 AC motors making 536 peak horsepower, 448 continuous, and 4,051 foot-pounds of torque, operating at a traction voltage of 600 volts. It's got a 2-speed Mack power shift transmission, so there is continuous power even during the shift. And then we have traditional Mack axle. So you have a 20,000-pound front axle and the proven Mack 462 rear axle riding on our Mack M-Ride rear suspension for the best possible ride with a mechanical suspension. Okay. Batteries, we've got 4 lithium NMC batteries, be able to charge at a rate of up to 150 kilowatts at 200 amps, 600 to 750 volts. And we also have the regenerative braking system. You know, at that 150 kilowatt rate, you should be able to recharge a vehicle in 90 minutes if you're starting from fully depleted to get to fully charged. And if you need less than that, a full charge, of course, that time can be reduced. Talking about accessories, you no longer have a diesel engine to power all of your accessories on the vehicle, so we've had to electrify them. So you've got accessories operating at 12, 24, and 600 volts. 600 volts is your traction motor driving the truck, as well as your EPTO. A lot of your auxiliaries are moved to 24 volt, like your e-power steering pump. You have a power steering pump driving a standard steering gear, but the hydraulic pressure is generated electrically. So you have that operating at 24 volts. Your air conditioning system's at 24 volts. As are your air compressors. And then 12 volts is going to be your lighting and your other cab accessories running at 12 volts the way they are today. We have this design for the rear loader and automated side loader bodies. You know, talk a little bit about the test program. We've got trucks out there running. We've got them running with DSNY, City of New York, in their Brooklyn 1 out of their garage. As well as working with Republic Services with an automated side loader body. DSNY was a rear loader. Republic is an automated side loader that's operated in Hickory, North Carolina. You know, they've had those trucks since the fall, and they've been running them. They've been running pretty well. You know, we've had a couple hiccups, but all in all, they've been running very well. I would say exceeding our expectations at this point, but they're probably collecting today, if as I understand it. So. And things are working very well there. And again, with the Mack, you know, you get not just an electric truck, it's an electric LR. So we know garbage trucks, we know the difficult lives they live, they take a beating, and we have a strong base to build our electric truck off of. We also have a fully established dealer network. As you can see, we've got locations around the United States. Proven uptime services. If you're familiar with Mack, we have what's called a Guard Dog Connect, a telematic truck monitoring system. So if the truck does throw code, that is reported to our uptime center in Greensboro, where an agent can diagnose the problem and assist you with the resolution of that problem. We have our Mack one-call line. We have technicians that will be trained, for agents that will be trained on the other end of that line, so that if you call it, there's a sticker on the door with that number. Call that anytime, 24/7, and you'll have a knowledgeable person on the other end of the line that can assist you with any repairs or any other issues you may have with the vehicle. And of course, the Mack Assist platform, which is our platform where to reduce downtime, any kind of service event that happens, Mack Assist will help you manage through that and work with you through the resolution of the problem. And we also have, of course, our established part distribution network. For those of you locally, I believe Brian Rottweiler is on the call here. He's a representative from Western Truck Center. If you are interested in a Mack or electric, please get in contact with Brian. He's very knowledgeable on that. And we are taking orders today. Well, now I should say we have been taking orders since the end of the year. But again, the order book is open. We will be building trucks this year. So get with Brian and we'll see what we can do to help you out there.
We do have a cut time for maybe one or two questions. We had a question about the life of the battery. How long does it need to be? What's the life of the battery? Maybe you could give a warranty on that, what you warrant for the battery, and whether or not you can run a full 8 to 10 hour shift on one charge.
Well, let's take the second question first. Full 8 hour shift on one charge. That could be, depends on, again, range is a very, it depends. But I would say in most cases, a full 8 hour shift would probably require some kind of top off mid shift, depending on the length of the route and the density, etc. And the first question was, but again, at 150 kilowatt charging rate, that depending on how much of a boost you need midday, that could be 20 minutes to a half an hour, or if you need a complete recharge, that would be 90 minutes. Most cases that probably wouldn't be necessary. Talking about the other question was,
So what's on the battery
life?
Yeah, the life of the battery.
Yeah.
What do you warrant?
The warranty on the battery is going, I believe, we'll be coming out with an announcement on that here with the truck, but it will be, I believe, with the gold package, which will come with the vehicle, be 5 years, I believe.
Okay. Well, there were a couple other questions, and if we can get to them at the end, we will. But right now, so that we don't end up missing anybody, I think, Jennifer, we were going to run a second poll right now, I believe.
Yes, we are. Okay. So let's take about 30 seconds or so to answer that polling question. Well, it looks like quite a few are coming in. Let's give it 5 more seconds. All right. So I am going to close this and share the results. There we have it.
I think that goes to show all of us out here in the field would really like to see some wheels on the ground dumping those carts with the EV technology.
Yeah, I was going to say something sort of like that, Alan. It's like, you beg and you beg and you beg, and then they put that truck down in New York and you kind of want to go. And in North Carolina, you go, wait a minute. What about Sacramento? So I think this is something we want all of these guys to hear us say. We want those trucks at the very least demoed and certainly to the greatest degree available and supported in Sacramento. We're very anxious to get this to happen in Sacramento, and not super happy when we see it happen in the East Coast, although there's nothing we can do to control that.
And I can speak for the Department of Waste Management and Recycling for Sacramento County. We are ready to do that.
Yeah, you've earned your stripes. So you guys are clearly on the forefront and ready to go. But that's a really interesting poll there. and great answers. Next up, we have Matt Wetta with Peterbilt. He's the National Account Manager, and he's going to give us the OEM picture from the Peterbilt perspective. Matt, if you're ready, and Jennifer, if you're ready, give him the screen, and we can put him on the presenters list. Here we go.
All right, Matt, you're up. If you could let people see you, Matt, that'd be great.
Looks like you're able to see my screen there. Are you all able to hear me all right?
Yes, way to go. We see you.
Great. Zero technological issues, so great way to start. So just to introduce myself, I'm Matt Wetta. I'm our National Account Manager for electric powertrain vehicles at Peterbilt. Been with the company for a little over 15 years, so been in the trucking industry for a long time, and more recently here moved into the electric vehicle role. So to start with, I was a little gun shy on putting a video in here. I was afraid it might get technologically challenging. So how about we call it a homework assignment? We just did a Pikes Peak run with the 579 EV, pretty fun marketing opportunity. And so if you go out to YouTube, there's a nice Peterbilt video of this 579 running up Pikes Peak. Pretty cool marketing video for that. So check it out maybe after the call. So besides just cool marketing videos, we've got real trucks out in the real world doing real truck things, all on electric power. Really three focused points or applications, truck models that we're doing that with. To start with, the 579 EV and drayage applications, and in the ports in Southern California. We've got some 520s that are in refuse applications as well. We've got an automated side loader and a rear loader. And then we've got some 220s that are actually in the area that you all are in, the San Jose, Sacramento, kind of mid-California area there, running loads for Frito-Lay. So these are real-world applications, putting real miles on out there in the world working today, building our experience in electric vehicles. In addition, based on the experience with those vehicles and market fit, we've got 3 electric vehicles that are available for order today that will be delivered in 2021 timeframe for customer applications. So, like I said, the Model 579 for regional haul and drayage applications, the Model 520 for refuse, and then the Model 220 for pickup and delivery, maybe just a little bit above last mile, but regional haul, pickup and delivery as well. So maybe to start with a little bit of explanation of why. So to start, I don't think that EVs are everything to everyone that a diesel truck is today. There's some things that they probably can't do quite as well as a diesel truck today, but there's also things that they can do better than a diesel truck today. And so with that in mind, really my first step in a customer conversation on EV is to identify an application where an EV can really be very successful in comparison to a diesel. And so this is a checklist of what those applications are. So to start with, on an EV, batteries are big, they're expensive, and they're heavy. And so the shorter range applications are more conducive to electrification. So that's one item we want to talk about when we look at an EV application, is what's the overall range for the vehicle in a day's work. Another thing I thought Scott did a good job of highlighting, in particular, refuse is a fantastic application for an EV. You think about 60 feet stop, 60 feet stop, 60 feet stop, picking up trash cans all day. A lot of refuse customers are changing brake pads 3 and 4 times a year, and that's maintenance, that's cost, and you think about all the fuel you're burning to drive that 60 feet just to throw it out the window, burning it off as heat with your brakes. And so with an EV, we can regenerate that energy and put it back into the batteries, leading to more efficient operation, and then also reduce maintenance costs for you out there in the real world picking up trash. Another thing that I sort of touched on in terms of range, so applications that are weight sensitive will be more challenging, at least especially to start with on EVs. The batteries are heavy, and so in a Class 8 vehicle, I would say we're typically in the 7,000 pounds heavier as compared to diesel range. That can vary a little bit based on diesel spec and range of the EV, but to give you an idea, so applications such as refuse, where you're either accumulating load throughout the day or less gross weight sensitive, are better for suitability to EV. And then lastly, return to home at night is another good thing in terms of suitability for an EV. So to start, the infrastructure that's available just without even really thinking about it in terms of diesel is not the case with electric. So we need to install our own infrastructure, our own chargers. And so if we can do that one time and return to that same point every night like we would typically do in refuse, that makes an application more suitable to an EV. So those are kind of the screening criteria that I like to talk through and identify some of the best applications for EV first, so we can be most successful. So to go straight to specs, specific to this audience, I just was going to talk about the 520 for refuse. So we're using an e-axle powertrain. So if you think about your current 40K, typically diesel drive axle, this would remove the input shaft where your driveline would normally come in, and in its place would be an electric motor. Also contained within the pumpkin is a 2-speed gear train, similar to a transmission on a diesel, but we just don't need near the amount of reduction in gear options with an EV that we do with a diesel because of the greater capability in terms of torque and speed range for an electric motor as compared to a diesel. We've got two wheelbase configurations, a 200 and a 215-inch wheelbase. In terms of PTO to power the body, we can do that two ways. One option, we can furnish an e-motor, which would run a conventional hydraulic pump that would power the body. So in that way, really any body that could go on a diesel truck today could also go on an electric truck in the future. But we can also handle just outputting power electrically, and that's it. And so in the case of a fully electrified body, we can just go straight electricity to power the body rather than make an intermediate step to hydraulics. And so that's a really likely a more efficient route to power the body in terms of accomplishing in high range and in efficiency. With that in mind, we can do really any of the main applications in refuse, front loader, side loader, or rear loader. I will say that the front loader application is most likely to be the longest total range and the most driving between stops, which will make it more challenging in terms of accomplishing a day's work without needing to opportunity charge. And so rear loader and side loader applications, or potentially front loader applications with shorter distances between pickups and shorter distances between landfill are probably the best opportunities for an EV today. We've got a 396 kilowatt hour battery pack, so just roughly 400 kilowatt hours. Think of that as analogous to your fuel tank size on a diesel. We expect in many applications that's going to be sufficient to accomplish a day's work before needing to recharge. But just as Scott mentioned, obviously just like a diesel, it depends on the duty cycle, it depends on the driver, it depends on the load, it depends on the route, it depends on traffic, it depends on temperature. All those things are factors. And so we'll learn more and more as we go through this journey converting to electric trucks in terms of in range and how each application works and how suitable it is. I mentioned previously the weight increase, about 7,000 pounds over a typical diesel spec. So that's a consideration in terms of the application and where EV fits best. In terms of performance, The quietness of the EV powertrain is a really nice thing, and then another thing that's really nice is the performance. So 400 kilowatts, or a little over 500 horsepower continuous, and then even a little bit more than that in terms of peak power for acceleration capability. So we expect our electric truck to be able to outperform our diesel trucks in terms of acceleration. And then as far as charging, on an AC charging basis, we can support up to 19.2 kilowatt hours, 19.2 kilowatt AC charging. On a Class 8 vehicle, that's really not sufficient to support daily operation. And so I would generally consider for a Class 8 truck, AC to be like a backup charge capability, or potentially at a service location, or those types of things. Once we get to in customer use and in customer daily service, we really need to be talking about DC fast charging. We can support up to 125 kilowatt DC fast charge capability, which would give you a full charge in about 4 hours. For most refuse customers, we think we don't necessarily need to charge that fast, unless we're talking about opportunity charging in the middle of the day. And so I won't go into a ton of detail on chargers, but just a little bit, because it's a very relevant thing to make sure that we get right, besides just the vehicle application, also the chargers. And so to that end, this is just a spectrum of what we can offer in terms of charging capability. So on the low end, a 20 kilowatt DC charger is probably not enough for a Class 8 type vehicle. But for some of our medium duty offerings, that's probably a pretty nice sweet spot. For the Class 8, we probably need to be talking about a 50 kilowatt charger or more. I would say in many applications, we would probably start just one more step to the right there in the 120 to 180 kilowatt range. The reason for that is, as soon as we talk about more than one EV, having a little bit bigger charger really gives you some operational flexibility. So now, rather than only being able to support a slow overnight charge, we could fast charge or opportunity charge in the middle of the day if needed, or that same charger can be split and used across two vehicles for a slow charge overnight. And so the initial investment is more for the larger charging capability. But when you distribute that investment across more than one vehicle, the investment is really fairly similar, and it gives you more operational flexibility. And so that's a consideration as well. We're able to resell all these different chargers, as well as some I didn't mention, through PACCAR parts. In addition to that, in wanting to provide a turnkey solution, and not just the truck, but also the charging, there's really more than just the charger to think about here. When you go beyond the low speed AC charging, which is basically every charger solution that would be a workable solution for a Class 8 truck, you probably have infrastructure considerations as well. So you're not going to be able to just plug this charger in. You need to probably at the minimum be adding breaker capacity in your facility, and maybe, or likely even, additional service capability into your facility from your power company. And so for that purpose, we've partnered with Hvp and Schneider Electric. They provide electrical infrastructure components, engineering consulting services. We can understand your duty cycles, the number of trucks, both initially planned as well as in longer term, help identify your infrastructure needs and help you accomplish those installations. Anything from a consult to engineering drawings and plans, to even providing the construction and installation services as well, or anywhere in between as it suits you. We can, of course, also work with other charger providers. That works too. Just want to make sure that we can support you in your journey on electrification as needed. One thing to make sure that we're aware of and thinking about, in addition to the charging and infrastructure conversation, is the lead time associated with that. especially as we start to get into the medium and higher speed chargers. This can be the pacing item for putting an EV into service. And so usually I like to talk first about application and make sure we've got a good fit for an EV to be successful. And then the next conversation, I like to talk about charging and infrastructure and get that going so that we make sure that we're in front of our needs and we can deliver both a vehicle, but also a charging solution that meets your needs. As some of the others have mentioned, we've been in Refuge for a long time. We're one of the leaders in the industry. Not only are we able to provide you the trucks and the charging infrastructure, but the service that is one of the most critical things in terms of making your organization work. We can work on your truck. We can provide you parts for your truck. We can make sure you stay on the road and stay productive. And so we can do that with a dealer network across the US and Canada, mentioned here. Last couple of things I wanted to mention in terms of total cost of ownership and EV adoption. Two things that are definitely pretty significant considerations. So one of the biggest costs of any diesel truck is how much it costs to fuel the truck in its lifetime in terms of fuel costs, dollars per gallon for diesel. When we look at the transition to electric, there's really two things that are important in terms of the comparison of TCO of an electric truck to diesel. So one of those is the electricity rates that are available in your area. That's a significant consideration. In most cases, you can get energy more inexpensively electrically than you can with diesel. And so you should expect to see in most cases an efficiency improvement in terms of dollars per mile to drive the truck down the road in an electric truck as compared to a diesel truck. The other consideration there is in the regen capability. So like I mentioned earlier, with the diesel truck, every time you're stopping, that energy is going out the window and it's wasted. With an electric truck, we can regenerate a portion of that energy and add to your range and lower your energy cost per mile. And so that's a significant value of an EV, aside from just the emissions and greener aspects. To help support you in understanding the impact of that, we're working on an EV total cost of ownership calculator. It's not live yet, but it's in process. We'll have that on peterbilt.com, and I can facilitate conversations on total cost of ownership using that tool, but before then as well, to help you understand the business model of EV as compared to diesel. Another thing that's significant to consider, I mentioned already, the brake change costs and some of the maintenance costs of the diesel and how electric will compare. We're expecting to see some significant improvements in terms of total cost of ownership as it relates to maintenance as we move to electric powertrains. And then lastly, grant funding. In particular in California, there's a lot of opportunities here to help subsidize the initial price of an electric truck, which is typically considerably higher than a diesel truck, and help mitigate some of that upfront cost to help aid fleets in adopting EV and move into EV technologies. So we can work with you in identifying opportunities there. All three of the trucks I've talked about today are eligible for California Hvp funding. There's other grant opportunities as well, both in California and other states. And so that's something that I would encourage you to investigate if you have not. And it's something we can help you with as well. So that's really what I had to talk through on Peterbilt and our electric offerings and what things I would recommend you be talking about, thinking about in your transition from a diesel truck to an electric truck. And so really I would say next steps, review and understand your application. First and foremost, that's the most important. We want to make sure that we put an EV into an application in which you can be successful with it in your operations daily. That's the most important. I think it's well reflected in the survey responses we saw just before I started. From there, we can develop an EV specification for you, help you work through chargers and infrastructure and grant funding potential as well. anything you need to facilitate EV. So really, that's what I had. Feel free to ask any questions if you have them.
Thank you very much, Matt. We need to move the rest of the way. We have had several questions that have come in. Many of them are sort of generic that we might pose back to every member of the panel if we have time when we get done. And if not, we'll have to ask you to answer them in writing, and then we will distribute them. But for right now, I think we're going to need to move to the next presentation. And thank you very much. Next presentation is Dave Stancil with Cleantech. He's going to talk about electric vehicle charging, infrastructure issues, charge management, and those types of questions. So there we go. So Dave, I guess your screen is up and it looks like you're ready to go.
Yep. Just one moment. Let me turn on my camera here. There, can everybody see me?
You might want to try to maximize your screen if you don't want everybody to see all your widgets at the bottom. It's up to you.
There we go. There we go. How's that?
Looks good. Looks good.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. My name's Dave Stancil. I'm the Director of Business Development for Cleantech. We build infrastructure for charging and infrastructure for EV vehicles all around the United States. Obviously, we're primarily focused right now on the California market because that's where a lot of the opportunities are. I'll be brief on some of my slides because the other gentlemen have already kind of addressed some of the line items, so I won't bore you dwelling on them. But I'll give you kind of an EV charging overview, matching chargers to fleet profile, infrastructure requirements, government and utility incentives, the services that are offered by charging providers, and then a little bit more about Cleantech. EV charging overview, the graph that I'm showing you, and I did this on purpose, is actually a graph for electric vehicle automobiles. So this, because you hear a lot about charge times, and a number of the gentlemen talked about charging as they went through their presentations, but the time to charge 100 miles of range by kilowatt level for an automobile, you see the times that are there for level 2, level 3, and high power. An automobile typically has a 100 kilowatt battery in it. So to charge a 100 kilowatt battery to go 100 miles in an automobile on a 20 kilowatt charger is 98 minutes. When you look at the trucks that were described, they're typically in the 300 to 400 kilowatt range in terms of the batteries. So you can take these numbers and multiply them by 4 in terms of the charging time. But one other thing that you need to take into consideration is in an automobile, a kilowatt translates into about 3 to 4 miles of driving. When you look at a truck, it typically translates into about a half a mile of driving because the truck's heavier and it's doing a number of other things as was described by a number of the gentlemen. So when you look at charging, you need to take into consideration a number of factors, the load that the truck's going to be handling, the number of miles that are going to be driven, and all the ancillary things that are associated with it. So when you match your chargers to your fleet profile, there's a number of things that you want to ask yourself. It's what type of trucks are you using? What's the battery pack size? What is the connector size? And what's the maximum charge rate that a truck can accept? As Matt kind of went through his presentation, I believe he said that currently their vehicles could take a 50 kilowatt charger. As I showed on the previous slide, chargers range anywhere from 7 kilowatts up to 350 kilowatts. So you need to make sure that you match the capacity and the capability of what your truck can handle to what is going to be available from a charging station. Buying a 350 kilowatt charging station doesn't make sense if your truck can't handle that. It can't take that amount of charge. Other things to take into consideration, how quickly do you need to charge the truck? Is it a single shift return to base fleet, or is it a multi-shift fleet where you need it to use it maybe 16 hours a day? Other things that are very important are, what are the utility rates and demand charges for EV charging? You might want to consider mitigating demand charging by utilizing dynamic load management technologies, which basically throttle the amount of charging to make sure that you don't have spikes in your EV charging. And what that means for folks is, one of the kind of gotchas that people don't realize is when you're doing EV charging and you have 30, 40, 50 vehicles all hooked up, connected at the same time, drawing a load, some utilities will charge you a premium because you're spiking over the average utility rate. So you want to make sure that you mitigate that to lower that possibility. Another way you can do that is to implement solar and battery energy storage systems, or BESS systems, to help reduce the cost, especially during peak charging periods. What that basically says is, you're installing battery capacity at your site, and you're charging it during the day when your trucks are out being used. Then in the evening, when your trucks are charging, you're hooked up to the EV charger, but you're also supplementing some of the power from the grid with battery power that you've stored during the day, which helps then to mitigate those spikes and those demand charges. So infrastructure requirements, is it an existing panel? Is it new service? Is the existing panel 208, 120 volt, or 277, 480 volt? 208 volt is suitable for level 2, but as Matt stated, that's not really viable in a truck environment. So 480 volts is required for DC fast charging. Things that you need to identify: are they conveniently located? Is there sufficient capacity in the existing panel to add EV chargers? If it's new service, you need to identify a location for a new meter panel. And then one of the things that we strongly recommend is that you have a dedicated metered EV panel to maximize your EV incentive utility rates and other credits. Being able to identify what you're explicitly using for EV will help you with the myriad of incentives that are offered. And I think Christian's going to get into some of the incentives in the presentation that follows mine. So when we look at existing capacity in the utility transformer, and you're talking to your utility, you want to discuss the new EV load that you're planning to install with that utility. The rep will help you determine whether you need to upgrade or install a new transformer to service the load. Depending on the load size, you may have options for a pole mount or pad mount transformers. Things to take into consideration depending upon your physical location: a pad mount transformer will require additional real estate, and if you co-locate that with heavy equipment, you may require installation of a spill containment tray under the utility transformer. One of the things that you also need to be aware of as you look at EV charging, that sometimes we've installed hundreds of EV charging stations across California. And one of the things that kind of surprises people that they don't realize is that EV chargers, the charging stations, are continuously drawing power. So even when I am not charging a vehicle, that device is actually pulling power from the grid. So just something to keep into consideration is that the charging fees that you're going to receive from the utility, obviously while you're charging the vehicle, you're going to be drawing current, but you're also drawing current even when those devices are not in use. Just something to keep in mind. There's lots of government and utility incentives that are available. Utility rate incentives from the utility itself. As Matt and some of the others have said, there's utility hardware installation incentives. There's Cali VIP, your local Air Resources Board, CARB, and then there's the low carbon fuel standard credit that's available in California. Kind of some of the services that are offered by charging providers. A full service provider, it operates as a charge point operator, where they'll actually operate the physical charging stations for you. They'll manage them, take care of everything associated with it, do the site acquisition and financial analysis, site assessment, site design, engineering, planning and permitting, construction management, in-house construction, create software for you to manage the actual site and perform the service and maintenance. There's other variants that you'll see of that. A lot of people specialize in certain areas. They're very good in construction. They're very good in engineering design, but they don't do kind of everything. Kind of what Cleantech, where we're a little bit unique in the industry, is that we offer all the services. We do everything in-house, from financial modeling and site assessment, turnkey solution, design, engineering, planning, and construction services. We have our own in-house engineering staff. A number of folks that worked for SoCal Edison and PG&E are on our staff, so they're very familiar with all the processes from permitting, timelines, things of that nature. I thought Matt brought up a very good point that you do need to take into consideration, and that is the lead time, especially with the higher speed chargers. As you get into the permitting process and everything associated with it, the lead time was very accurate. They described, we'd say it's probably 6 to 8 months, depending upon the municipality, to get everything you need, as well as the lead time on the physical devices can be 3 to 4 months. Just to make sure everybody's aware of that. These are just some sample projects that Cleantech's done. We've done a lot of work for Shell Oil up the 101 in Northern California, electrifying the 101 from Oregon all the way down to San Francisco. Done work for Tesla, Electrify America, Recargo, installing a number of the Bank of America sites for Electrify America. This is my contact information. Please feel free to reach out to me directly if you have any questions. And with that, Jennifer, I'll turn it back over to you.
And I think at this point, Jennifer, we were going to run our third and final poll.
Yes. Second here. Okay. Here we go. What level of planning have you done for charging infrastructure? Okay, let's do about maybe 30 more seconds here. People still voting. Okay. All right, so let's close this and kind of share the results.
Well, we see some folks who actually started the process, and quite a few folks who are thinking a lot about it, and less than half that haven't done anything about it yet. So that's quite a bit of motion in the direction of getting going. I think, Alan, you guys at the county have been doing a fair amount of work with SMUD, haven't you?
Yeah, we started conversations with them regarding their charging as a service. We've also were fortunate enough to work with Christian and receive some Hvp funding for some infrastructure that will be going in up at our North Collections operation. So yeah, there's you can never start planning too early when it comes to projects in California.
Yeah. Well, and as you said earlier, you're ready to get started with demos and anxious to see what people have to offer. And it sounds like you're getting the charging system in place to be able to do that. And since you did specifically mention some funding that you had gotten from the Sacramento Air District and Christian Damker, that's a perfect lead in to introducing Christian Damker with the Sacramento Air District. We'll talk about the funding that some other folks might be able to get their hands on. Christian, I think you're up. If you want to put yourself in there, and Jennifer, give him the screen.
There he is.
Get all this fun stuff here.
Mm-hmm.
As we mentioned, let's see here, where are we going? Hold on just a second here. Oh, I am trying to find, there we go. Okay, is this all working now?
Looks good.
Okay. Well, my name's Christian Damker. I'm one of the air quality engineers working for the Sacramento Air District. As was referenced before, almost exactly a year ago, we did a similar workshop in real life, IRL as they say these days. But a lot has changed in the last year, and that's why I'm welcoming you to my house. And this is the first time I've had 103 people inside my house all at once, so it's quite interesting. But two things that haven't changed is we still generate trash and we need zero emission trucks. So that's why I'm here to kind of close the loop on what we can do for funding those trucks. I want to just start off by talking about zero emission transportation in general, and then give an overview of the different funding programs that are available to help the transition from fossil fuels to zero emission. And then also give you some updates as to some timelines and other stuff that's going on from a incentives, regulatory, government perspective. Zero emission transportation is a priority for our area. We have been very successful in replacing older trucks with newer trucks, which has given us a huge reduction in NOx and diesel particulate matter emissions, and that's been excellent. We've had a lot of success with that, but we want to build on that and take it to the next level and start going after global climate change emissions. The nice nexus with zero emission transportation is especially in community vehicles like refuse trucks, because we get that double whammy of eliminating emissions from combustion engines in communities that are most impacted by pollution, but then everyone else benefits because we get fewer greenhouse gas emissions. So that's why refuse trucks are an interesting area for us. Now that a lot of us have been living in our houses more, we're spending weekdays here, we actually can hear those trucks in our neighborhood, and you know, it's a great way to remind yourself of what day it is by what day you have to take the trash cans out to the curb. And you know, that brings up some other discussions about noise. You know, one of the presenters was talking about that zero emission vehicles have a lot less noise, and as more and more people are living at home, staying at home during the day, local agencies and local governments may start seeing zero emission vehicles as a way to go after not just climate change, but noise and other nuisances in neighborhoods. So keep an eye out for that. We're currently in a pilot phase for zero emission transportation refuse trucks. That's why we're looking for partners, someone who can, you know, be that early adopter in the region and really push the technology. We've had a lot of success with school buses, and we're looking for that next nexus and partners like, you know, the county. Alan has been stepping up, but you know, there's a lot of other opportunities out there for the region, and let's see what we can do with transit. So the first funding that most people are aware of is the Hvp funding, and that has currently been closed. It was a victim of its own success. A lot of people saw the future and took all the money. The budget has been cut for Hvp, but it's sort of a moving target. The state is still negotiating what the final numbers are going to be for the program. Based on what came out last month, it's probably going to be about a 20% cut per vehicle. Refuse trucks in the past would have gotten $150,000. It looks like they may only get $120,000 out of this next round, potentially an additional $12,000 for vehicles that are based in disadvantaged communities. But again, this is still under discussion, so that it's not final, it's not the official numbers, so we'll see what happens with Hvp. That Hvp is going to be run through the truck manufacturers, the truck dealers. So the person that you're buying the vehicle from is the one who will take care of the Hvp funding It's taken off the invoice price of your truck, so you don't even have to have the Hvp come onto your books. It's all run through them, but you do have to go through an approved manufacturer. So, you know, I believe I think all of the OEMs on the call are listed on the Hvp website, so you can go there and look at it. But again, it is still in process, but it's about ready to reopen. Spring 2021 is what everyone's saying, and that's what we're planning on. Locally, we're trying to line up our funding to take advantage of Hvp and other opportunities. Our biggest contribution to this project is going to be under our CCAT program. And CCAT, we still have the ability to pay $100,000 per vehicle, and we also have the ability to stack that with Hvp. So because it's a local funding source, we can still combine it with Hvp. The other nice thing about CCAT is that you don't have to scrap an existing unit. That makes it a lot easier to add these vehicles to your fleet. We are still, you know, trying to figure out exactly how we're going to roll out CCAT, but we do want to try and get it out here in the springtime. There may be some limits on, you know, who can apply, potentially getting priority for disadvantaged communities. There may be some caps, but we'll get all that out to the fleets before we open up the program. Beyond that, the state Carl Moyer program guidelines do still allow us to replace diesel and alternative fuel refuse trucks with electric trucks. The problem is that the Moyer guidelines were never designed for greenhouse gas reductions, so the funding is substantially less than most other programs. We can only pay about $40,000 to scrap a perfectly good truck in your fleet. We're working with them to try and find ways. The governor's proposed a bunch of new changes to the state funding programs, and we're hoping to really reopen those programs in the future to promote this kind of technology. But as of today, that's what we can offer under that one. So CCAT's probably going to be your best bet locally. Like I said, you have to scrap something with DMV. You don't have to scrap with CCAT. The infrastructure funding is going to be a challenge this round. We've gotten a lot of feedback from our stakeholders about the value of private infrastructure versus public infrastructure, infrastructure that's available to anyone at any time versus behind the gate chargers that are only for one vehicle. And then the thought about, do we use money for vehicles or chargers? So there's still some controversy, but as Cleantech mentioned, there are a lot of other funding sources. There's Cali VIP, there's some SMUD stuff, but infrastructure is a very complicated thing, and the site costs are going to be challenging, especially if you have a legacy fleet that's just been parking in the back lot for 20 years and there's no 480 volt three-phase service. You got to do trenching, you got to do all sorts of groundwork, you got to do drainage, you got to upgrade everything. It could be a very, very expensive project. So as I said, start planning that, and if there's an opportunity for funding, we'll look for it. So that leads us to our strategies. What we want to do is show the state that refuse is a good option to sort of, you know, meet all of those needs that we have to help the communities with their pollutant exposure, to help the world with greenhouse gas emission reductions, and also to promote the advanced technology in applications where it can work. Refuse trucks are a great application to get things started. The nice thing is that this may also lead us into some flexibility under potential federal stimulus programs. There's been a lot of talk about what we can do to get out of COVID, and this may be an opportunity for programs like DERA. One of the other things was talked about the significant savings. A lot of the operators of electric vehicles are showing a lot of savings, especially if you're going from a diesel unit to electric unit. You can save quite a bit of money. However, you're going to have a large cost share. It's a huge upfront cost. We're all designed to run on diesel or natural gas, and it's hard to make that shift. It's similar to everybody used to go to the office to work, and now we have to work from our homes. So it's kind of buying new furniture and getting everything all set up. But once you've gone through that phase, it's probably going to be a much better option for everybody. So the timeline that we're looking at, we're planning on going to go to online applications, and that's going to be for zero emission vehicle replacement infrastructure. For us, we're hoping to get some information out to you next month about what our plans are going to be for CCAT, Moyer, or other local programs. HVIP, we don't know yet. That there's still a lot of unknowns in terms of the state budget, but make sure to sign up for any of the announcements out there. We are offering a lot of flexibility on the delivery timelines because we know these are new technologies, and especially with body integration, there may be some challenges that we don't know of. So we're going to try and give as much flexibility as possible, building towards, you know, regional programs. Like I said, showing what we did with school buses. We put a couple school buses in a couple fleets, and it worked very well. And we hope to replicate that same success and build on it so that we can evolve over the next couple of years. One thing I just wanted to mention, what I didn't put in my slides, there was a mention about regulations. I'm not really qualified to talk too much about it. That's more of an Air Resources Board thing. But there are a lot of regulations that are being proposed for in-use zero-emission vehicles. The governor has pushed a lot of executive orders and has directed the California Air Resources Board to go after new and in-use vehicles. Refuse trucks were one of the first trucks affected by the diesel regulations. So it's a pretty good bet that they're probably going to be targeted first for electrification or hydrogen. We don't know exactly, but it's a good application for zero emission technology, and start planning for it. And like I said, you may also come under local pressure as more and more of this gets out, more and more stuff from New York and Los Angeles, you know, boards of directors, people start seeing this, and it's like, oh, I'd like to have electric refuse trucks in Davis. Oh, I'd like to have it in Folsom. That would be so great for our technology. This way, you as a fleet manager, you as a stakeholder can answer those questions and be right on time. So that's it for me. Definitely thank you guys all. I'm very impressed that we have this many attendees, and hope you get some good Q's and A's.
Thank you very much, Christian. One quick addendum to what Christian just mentioned. There is, since I'm going to do a little bit of an update here, I will put myself on the screen and say there is a bit of an addendum. That is, there is the governor's executive order 20-79, if anybody wants to look it up, which has very aggressive targets for the electrification of transportation in California. And the Advanced Clean Truck Rule has been adopted by the Air Resources Board, and there is an Advanced Clean Fleet Rule that is being developed right now, both of which, again, implement the governor's executive order and their aggressive efforts at moving to electrification. The Advanced Clean Truck Regulation is everything 14,000 pounds and 14,001 pounds GVW and up, and the Advanced Clean Fleet Rule is everything 8,501 pounds and up. So I just wanted to provide that brief update about regulations, and then I thought maybe we'll just maybe go through, since we have a little bit of time here, we can go through a few of the questions that came up. I'm not 100% sure, Jennifer, can every one of the panelists unmute themselves if we ask them a question right now?
Yes. In fact, I was kind of hoping that all of the panelists could put their cameras on.
Okay.
And then that way we can pose the questions.
Right. Okay.
And
Scott's the one remaining that I don't see up there, but so there's, okay, so one question that came in that was addressed to a couple of different companies, but it applies to all three, I think, would be basically, what is the cost of your truck? And another one was, can you talk about how many bin cycles you're able to do? Some of you did, some of you didn't, but basically maybe we could go alphabetically, Lion, Mac, Peterbilt, and say, what's your vehicle cost, and how many bin cycles does that get you? Lion first. We can't hear you, Charles. You're muted somehow or other.
There we go. There you go.
The cost of the Refuge truck is going to be based on the battery pack that you select. And as far as the ability to collect bins, it's between 1,000 and 1,200 bins on a route.
And then Mac?
That's Line Electric.
Yeah, I know. So I got you with Lion. Next up is Mac.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Just want to make sure. Cost is determined by the selling dealer. So you would have to get with your local dealer to receive a quote for the vehicle. How many bins? Again, it's going to depend on route and a number of other factors, but yeah, it would be 500-600 on a charge. Again, depending on route.
And
But of course, midday top off, you can certainly extend that significantly.
And Matt, what about Peterbilt? The cost. Oop, can't hear you. Can't hear you. Matt, we can't hear you. And I can't read lips.
There you go.
There we go. I think you hear me now.
Yep.
Okay, sorry. So I hate to give this answer, but to some degree it depends. As far as initial purchase price, obviously it depends on spec and content, and I think Charles's point, battery capacity. Maybe just to give you an idea of the ballpark, I usually just use 3x of diesel as an idea of rough ballpark of what you can expect. Obviously it can vary from there. But that at least gives you an idea of what you're talking about. And then there's additional for charging and infrastructure. In terms of range and bins and some of that, again, unfortunately, I feel like the best answer is really it depends a little bit. I think we expect to be capable of a full day's work in residential pickup applications with reasonably short distances between houses or bins, and relatively close hauls to the landfill. To maybe give an idea that's not totally helpful, but maybe helpful, with the same size battery pack and a 579 and 80,000 pounds, we're expecting a range of about 150 miles. And so I know a lot of people on Refuge don't typically talk about mileage, but more, gallons per hour. With that in mind, we're trying to hit that target of a day's work on a charge. But like I said, there's a wide spectrum of what that can mean. And so to give a little bit of an answer, I think we expect to be capable of about a day's worth of work in residential applications with a reasonable haul to the landfill. But I think there will be applications that'll exceed our capability in a day with longer hauls or more demanding duty cycles.
And before I ask another generic question, the 579 is available for order today. Did you say that?
Yes.
For delivery by the end of 2021, or is that right?
Yes.
Interesting. Okay, because I know a lot of refuse haulers use a few at least fifth wheel tractors to pull trailers around, you know, out to the landfill from a collection point and that sort of thing. But then the next generic question for all three, I think, is oh shoot, I lost track of it here as I was asking my own personal question there.
Hey Tim, I'll jump in with a
Yeah, please do. Save me.
Yeah.
Save me.
So this came on the screen, and it's basically, it says due to high upfront costs, and this is actually for all the percenters, due to the high upfront cost of electric vehicles, as well as charging infrastructures, some companies are offering subscription-based, i.e. lease models. Have the presenters companies explored a leasing option on some of the equipment, vehicles, as well as infrastructure? And Matt, why don't you jump in and take that?
Okay, yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't want to talk over anybody. So I guess to start, we can absolutely lease trucks, and we can give you options there, either full service and variable terms. No problem, we can absolutely be done. The thing I would say that I guess is maybe a little bit of a caution in that approach, really lease price is just a function of resale value of a piece of equipment. And resale value is a function of how flexible that equipment is in some other person's application. And so for an EV, there's two big challenges to how easily it can be rehomed, if you will. One of those is it's not necessarily going to be able to do every job that diesel can do today. So, you know, some lesser subset of your typical refuse applications are possible with an EV today. And so I think that will make residual value a little bit worse, which makes the lease a little bit more expensive. The other thing that's a consideration is the charging and the infrastructure. And so today I would say EV infrastructure in terms of the size and capability to support a Class 8 vehicle is pretty limited. And so to put a truck into a second life means now that investment must be made twice at two different locations rather than just once. And so I guess my advice is to approach an EV purchase with the idea of buying it and running it for life. I think that'll yield the best financial performance. But in lieu of that, we can absolutely do lease options as well.
I had a question for Charles. You mentioned you talk a lot, obviously, about what it takes to get the amount of power. A lot of these fleets have 100 trucks parked in one place, maybe even more. As they go to being to electrifying, what kind of substation and transformer and power distribution do you think a 100 refuse truck fleet would be looking at? If you could just kind of give a 30-second characterization of what that looks like.
Well, the approach that we take, and that's a good question,
I'm
is
sorry,
we assign.
I was asking. I'm sorry. I meant Dave. I'm sorry. Dave is the one. I'm terribly sorry. I wanted to ask Dave that question. And you're muted, Dave. Still muted. Still muted. Unmute yourself.
I am. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. They would be large. That's the. I'm not an engineer, so I'll be honest up front. That's really it's really a function of working with utility to try to identify what power is available and where and how easy it is to pull in. But as I kind of stated in my presentation, that's a lot of juice you're going to be pulling, and having that infrastructure in place. It really requires a partnership with your local utility to identify the best way to get you that power. I know that's not a great answer, but I think the other gentleman would probably agree with me. It's not a simple answer.
So Charles, you started down that road. Maybe did you have? I mean, I'm really kind of curious about it. You have 100 refuse trucks. You have them in one place. They all have to charge up and be out the next day. That seems like a humongous amount of energy, and I'm just kind of getting just a scoping sense of what that looks like.
Well, you know, my answer is not going to be that much better, but it's going to be require a lot of power. But I was going to share that we have a division. Our Lion Energy team has the experts that would go out and take an assessment and report back what is required to accomplish that. So I'm not the resident expert.
So,
and also your question earlier in terms of a lease application or option, we are certainly having internal discussions, and our finance team is looking at that, and that's to be announced in this year, 2021.
And Tim, just real quick, one last thing to follow up on Charles' point. One of the things that Cleantech does do is we do offer, we operate as a charge point operator. Not saying it's the most cost efficient model when you have 100 vehicles, but we do have a model that allows you to quote unquote pay by the drink. So we basically would operate the charging station, be responsible for the infrastructure, but we would charge you for the charging that we actually provide for each vehicle. So that's really going to be an analysis that needs to be done. Part of our analysis that we do that determines which model works best for you. Is it best for you to purchase all that infrastructure, grab all that infrastructure, and then operate it? Or does it make more sense, depending upon the configuration of the site, does it make more sense for a CPO like Cleantech to bear the burden of all the expense of all the implementation of the infrastructure, but you're going to have charging fees you're going to pay us to charge your vehicles?
Yeah, it just seems to me that if you have that many vehicles in one place, it's almost impossible to imagine that there's enough power nearby to make that happen. It needs a whole new sort of, not just a transformer, but supplying the transformer. But moving beyond that, there was a question for Mac. In your presentation, you said that the fuel would be free, and one person asked the question, what did you mean by that? It might have sort of been either a misstatement or maybe we misunderstood what you were saying, but one person asked that question. So Scott, that would be to you. Again, you're muted right now, so you need to unmute yourself.
There we go.
Yep.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Yeah. Don't believe I said fuel was free in my presentation. Might have been in the video, actually.
It was in the video, Scott.
Yeah, I mean, I guess they were talking about the diesel. I mean, you're not using diesel.
So they didn't mean some unique program Mac was offering.
No, we aren't. We are not in the free electricity business, no.
Okay. All right. Alan, did you have another one that you wanted to sort of make sure we got asked?
Yeah, hold on right here. Yeah, let's see, U.S. manufacturing for Lion. How is that progressing forward?
I'm glad you asked that question. These are very exciting times in the EV space, and we have plans to have a manufacturing facility along to be neighbors of our experience centers located here in the U.S. So we're on track. That should happen early part of 2022.
So somebody else also asked about, they were real curious about what states you were thinking of building your manufacturing in. And they also asked a question about a project you had with Republic and when it was going to be announced. I don't know whether that's something that you can announce at this time. I hadn't heard anything about it, but what states are you focused on next? And is there anything you can say about Republic?
Well, with Republic, that's an ongoing process. It's still going through its paces in terms of meeting the customer's needs. As far as the manufacturing facility, it's going to be somewhere in the United States. I don't have actual location, but as soon as I hear about it, we certainly will make that announcement.
Thank you, Charles. I have a question here from our friends to the north. We went international this year. We have attendees from British Columbia and Canada, and they're asking, Peterbilt, are you available in BC?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a dealership network in both the US and Canada. In fact, I've just been talking with a company in Canada, not in the refuse business and on the other side of Canada. But yeah, we're absolutely going to have electric vehicles in Canada.
Great, thank you. There was one question I thought was interesting, and also battery pack modules in the different class of vehicles. And I think this goes for all three presenters of the vehicles. Are they interchangeable?
No, no. So I guess there's two things. I'm not sure if the question is meant, like between brands or just within the truck, but lithium-ion batteries, which is the base technology that all of the vehicles discussed here today use, they don't really like to be too hot and they don't really like to be too cold. And so for that reason, most of these vehicles will have charge control software that monitors state of charge of the batteries, and then also thermal management software that controls the heat and the cool of the battery as well. And so all that is pretty tightly integrated to the powertrain and to the vehicle. And so I wouldn't expect them to be interchangeable easily.
All right. Go ahead, Scott.
No, I just say, I agreed with what Matt said. I mean, I believe all the batteries will be proprietary to each manufacturer, again, designed to work specifically on their vehicles. I mean, there's a lot of integration work, as Matt said, that goes in to making these vehicles function properly. And, it's dependent on a very specific battery design that is going to be unique to each manufacturer.
All right, thank you.
So,
well,
Al, I'm sorry, Al. Go ahead, Al. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I was just going to turn it over. I was going to kind of close the question and answer period as we're coming up on time and turn it over to you for closing remarks. We will compile all the questions and send them out to all the panelists here today for their answers that are a generic question and or specific to them, and we will get those out to all. So Tim, with that, I will let you have the closing remarks.
Well, thank you very much. I want to say thanks to everybody who participated today. Really appreciate all the effort that went into it. I guess I'm not the buyer, so I can't be the person who makes this statement as strongly as it needs to be made, but we really want to demo these vehicles in Sacramento. We're desperately anxious to demo them in Sacramento. So I can't tell you guys how much we want to see some trucks in Sacramento.
You'll be our first call.
Yeah, any of you that have dealt with me know that I'm a broken record, and I really want to see it happen. So appreciate that. I think my closing remarks are just thanks to Lion and Mac and Peterbilt, Cleantech, and Sac Air District. We really appreciate it. Sacramento Clean Cities is very anxious to see this technology move forward in the Sacramento region, and we look forward to working with any and all of you that can help us out to get there. So as Alan said, we will have this information. The recording and the presentations will be posted to the Clean Cities webinar website, Cleantech, to our website. We'll have the links to the presentation and the videos, and that'll be in a couple days. And in the meantime, we really thank everybody, and I'll wrap it up. So Jennifer, does that take us to the end of the line here?
That does. Thank
One
you.
big shout out to Jennifer. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you so much for being the
Thank you,
pilot, Jennifer. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for your support,
Thank
Jennifer.
you all. Thank you all. Thank you all.
Thank
Well,
you.
and thank you to everyone who joined us today. We truly appreciate your patience with us and for being present, for giving us your time today. We realize that that is valuable. So thank you. Have a great day, everyone.
Okay, take care.
Bye-bye. Let's see.